Joining us now, former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, retired four-star Navy Admiral James Stavridis. He is Chief International Analyst for NBC News. Admiral, great to see you this morning. So let's start there in the Middle East. There is real rising fears globally and including in Washington that this conflict in the Middle East might be expanding. Give us your assessment. How certain is that in your mind, and what would an expanded war look like?
Those are the right questions. Let's start with the second one first. What does a wider war in the Middle East mean? What does a regional war mean? I think it would mean Iran and the United States both involved, effectively backing up their participants in this current conflict. So, Jonathan, we're really not, in my view, at the point where we should be talking about a wider war that involves both Iran and the United States pulled in. However, what we are seeing is a operational up-tempo that is going from a conflict inside Gaza now to a very escalating quickly conflict on the north of Israel with Hezbollah, Houthis continuing to send long-range missiles north from the Red Sea, and in the West Bank, ongoing Israeli operations. So there's a lot of conflict going on, but what are the chances of getting to that really wide war that draws Iran and the United States in? I think still somewhere in the range of 10 to 20%, uncomfortably high. But overall, I think it's still unlikely we're going to see this broadly turn into a regional war.
Admiral, I want to get to Ukraine in a second, but one more quick beat on this. What do you think needs to be done to have these two fighting forces step back from the brink?
One thing that the United States will be considering strongly is moving additional forces into the region. That sounds counterintuitive, but what it does is it's a signal to Iran not to encourage Hezbollah to escalate further. Beyond that, this military operation in the north of Israel is simply going to have to play out tactically before we talk about a ceasefire.
So, Admiral, the United Nations General Assembly's annual meetings are starting today. President Biden gets to New York here a little later on. His major speech tomorrow morning. His two big foreign policy priorities here for the end of his term. One, trying to get an end to the violence in the Middle East, including the war in Gaza. But secondly, still trying to rally the world around Ukraine. President Zelensky already in the States. The two leaders will meet actually in Washington later this week. Zelensky's supposed to present a victory plan. What do you make of it?
His victory plan is kind of taking plan A, which is push the Russians out and simply upping the game. He's not going to have any dramatic new news here. What he really wants, Jonathan, is permission to use longer range weapons like the ATACMS missile deeper and deeper into Russia. He thinks by doing that, he can put pressure on Zelensky. I don't see a lot of new motion in the plan. Let's face it, everybody globally is now waiting for the U.S. election before turning to what are the potential outcomes in Ukraine, because there's a very sharp difference between these two candidates.
We will have much, much more to say on the UN meetings later today and all week long as they begin in earnest. Former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, retired four-star Navy Admiral James Stavridis. Admiral, thank you. We'd love to speak to you again soon.
You bet.